certified incident briefings, real video evidence, strict accountability. You are viewing Bodycam incident reports.
Drop the hammer, hands up, now!
This is a tool. I'm fixing my fence. I'm on my own property.
I don't care, drop it or you will be
I'm
tased!
placing it down so you don't make a mistake you can't undo. There, it's down.
Don't move
I'm not
toward
moving
me!
toward you, officer. I'm de-escalating.
The screaming shattered the peaceful Saturday morning silence of the cul-de-sac. Birds that had been chirping in the oak trees scattered in a panic. But the man standing in the driveway of the pristine two-story brick house didn't flinch. He didn't jump. He didn't drop to his knees in terror. He just stood there, his posture straight as a rod, holding a claw hammer in his right hand midway through a swing at a loose fence picket. "Officer," the man said, his voice a low, terrifyingly calm rumble that cut through the younger man's shouting. "I am repairing my fence. This is a hammer. It is a tool, and I am standing on my own property. I don't care what you think you're doing. Drop it now. Hands in the air." Officer Kyle Braden was 28 years old, and he was vibrating with adrenaline. His hand was hovering over his holstered service weapon, his eyes darting around wildly. He saw a threat. He saw a large black man in a tank top and cargo pants holding a metal object. He saw danger. What he didn't see was the perfectly manicured lawn. He didn't see the American flag waving gently from the porch mount. And he certainly didn't see the invisible weight of 30 years of military discipline resting on the shoulders of the man he was screaming at. Marcus Thorne was 62 years old. He was a retired command sergeant major in the United States Army. He had led men through the sandstorms of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan. He had stared down warlords, negotiated with tribal leaders, and lost friends in combat. He knew what a threat looked like. And looking at the shaking, pale officer in front of him, Marcus knew exactly who the dangerous one in this situation was. "I am going to place this tool on the fence post," Marcus said, moving with agonizing slowness. "I am doing this so you do not do something stupid that you cannot undo. Don't you move. Do not move toward me." Braden shrieked, stepping back, his boots crunching on the gravel of Marcus's driveway. "I am not moving toward you, son. I am de-escalating a situation you have lost control of. Before we go any further into this story that is going to make your blood boil, I need you to do something for me. Go down to the comments right now and tell me where you're watching from. Represent your state, your country. And if you believe that a man should be safe in his own front yard without having a gun pulled on him, hit that subscribe button. You need to see how this ends, because the mistake Officer Braden is making right now is about to cost the city more money than he will ever earn in 10 lifetimes. Marcus Thorne wasn't just a homeowner. He was a pillar of this community. He had purchased this home 15 years ago with the money he saved from decades of service. He mowed the lawn on Thursdays. He washed his truck on Saturdays. He helped the widow next door, Mrs. Gable, with her groceries. He was exactly the kind of citizen the police were sworn to protect. But on this bright Tuesday morning, Officer Braden hadn't seen a citizen. He had been patrolling the neighborhood, a neighborhood he didn't usually cover, and saw a black man with a hammer near the side of a house. Braden, who had been on the force for just 4 years and had a reputation for being jumpy, decided that this didn't look right. He didn't run the license plate of the truck in the driveway. He didn't observe from a distance. He pulled his cruiser up to the curb, slammed the door, and immediately escalated to lethal threats. Marcus set the hammer down on the flat top of the fence post. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, elbows tucked in. It was the surrender pose, but on Marcus it looked like a challenge. His biceps, still thick from a lifetime of physical training, flexed in the morning sun. He looked Braden directly in the eyes. "My hands are empty," Marcus said. "Now take a breath, officer, and tell me why you are trespassing on my land." Officer Braden didn't take a breath. He didn't de-escalate. In his mind, the fact that this man wasn't cowering, wasn't begging, and was speaking to him with authority was a sign of aggression. It was, contempt of cop, the unwritten crime that has led to more unlawful arrests than almost anything else in American history. "I'm not trespassing, I'm conducting an investigation," Braden snapped, moving closer but keeping a wide gap, his hand still nervous near his belt. "We had reports of suspicious activity in the area, a vagrant vandalizing property." Marcus actually laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "A vagrant officer, look at me. Look at this house. Does this look like vandalism to you? I'm fixing a picket that came loose during the storm last night." "I don't know that," Braden argued. "I see a subject with a weapon damaging a perimeter fence. I need to see some identification, right now." Marcus lowered his hands slowly to his sides, keeping them away from his pockets. "Officer, I am not required to provide identification to you on my own property, unless you have a reasonable, articulable suspicion that a crime has been committed, is being committed, or is about to be committed. That is the law in this state. Fixing a fence while black is not a crime." "You're refusing a lawful order." Braden's voice pitched up an octave. "I am investigating a potential burglary or vandalism. That is my reasonable suspicion. Now let me see your ID or you're going into cuffs for obstruction." "You have no suspicion," Marcus countered, his voice steady as a rock. "You have a bias. If I were a white man in a polo shirt, you would have waved as you drove by. Instead, you stopped. You saw a black man in work clothes and you assumed criminal. That is a Fourth Amendment violation in the making, son. I suggest you get back in your car and drive away before you ruin your career." The term son seemed to snap something in Braden. He was used to fear. He was used to compliance. He wasn't used to a man in his 60s lecturing him on constitutional law in a driveway. "I am not your son, and I am not asking," Braden yelled. "Turn around. Put your hands behind your back." "For what?" Marcus asked. He didn't turn. He stood his ground. "You need to articulate the crime. Am I under arrest? If I am, tell me the charge." "I said turn around." By now, the commotion had drawn attention. The front door of the house next door opened. Mrs. Gable, a woman in her late 60s who had lived next to Marcus for a decade, stepped out onto her porch. She was holding her smartphone and she immediately started recording. Across the street, a man named Henderson, a retired insurance adjuster, came out to water his plants, watching the scene with a frown. "Officer, Mrs." Gable called out, her voice shaky but loud. "That is Marcus Thorne. He lives there. He's lived there for 15 years. What are you doing?" Braden whipped his head around. "Ma'am, step back inside. This is an active police investigation. Do not interfere." "I'm not interfering. I'm standing on my own porch," Mrs. Gable yelled back. She held the phone higher. "I'm filming this, Marcus. I've got you." "Thank you, Martha," Marcus said, never taking his eyes off Braden. "Keep that camera rolling. This officer's having a hard time understanding the concept of private property." Braden was losing control of the narrative. He had witnesses. He had a suspect who wasn't acting like a suspect. He had a camera pointed at him. A smarter officer, a more experienced officer, would have realized the mistake. They would have looked at the well-maintained house, the neighbors defending the man, and the man's calm demeanor, and they would have apologized. They would have said, "Sorry, sir, just checking on a call, have a good day." But Braden wasn't smart. And right now, he felt small. And for a man like Braden, feeling small was the most dangerous thing in the world. He couldn't back down now. If he backed down, he lost. In his mind, this wasn't about the law anymore. It was about dominance. "Last warning," Braden shouted, pulling his taser from its holster and pointing the red laser dot at Marcus's chest. "Comply, or you will be tased." The sight of the red laser dancing on Marcus's chest changed the temperature of the entire neighborhood. It wasn't a dispute anymore. It was a life or death situation. Marcus looked down at the red dot on his sternum, then back up at Braden. His face hardened. The calm, neighborly demeanor evaporated, replaced by the cold, tactical assessment of a soldier who had survived urban warfare. "You have drawn a less lethal weapon on an unarmed man standing on his own property who has made no aggressive movements," Marcus stated. He was speaking for the recording now. He wanted every word captured by Mrs. Gable's phone. "I am not a threat. I am not fleeing. I am not resisting. You are escalating force without cause. Get on your knees, cross your ankles." Braden screamed. His hands were shaking. The taser wobbled. "I will not get on my knees in the dirt of the home I own," Marcus said. "I have bad knees from jumping out of airplanes for this country officer. I am not getting on the ground. I will turn around. I will allow you to handcuff me. But I am doing this under extreme duress, and only to preserve my life, because you are clearly unstable. Do it now." Marcus slowly turned his back to the officer. He placed his hands behind his back, interlacing his fingers. He stood tall, his spine straight, looking at his own garage door. "You are making a mistake," Marcus said quietly. "A career-ending mistake." Braden rushed forward, holstering his taser and grabbing Marcus's wrists. He was rough, far rougher than he needed to be. He wrenched Marcus's arms up, trying to force the older man to bend over, but Marcus was like an oak tree. He didn't bend. Braden slapped the cuffs on, ratcheting them tight. Too tight. "You're under arrest." Braden panted, the adrenaline crash starting to hit him. "For what?" Marcus asked again. "Disorderly conduct, failure to obey a lawful order, resisting arrest." Braden listed the cover charges, the catch-all offenses police used when they didn't actually have a crime but needed to justify their actions. Braden began to search Marcus. He patted down his cargo pants, his pockets. He was looking for weapons, for drugs, for anything to justify the stop. He found nothing but a small pocket knife legal and a handkerchief. Then he reached into Marcus's back pocket and pulled out his leather wallet. "Let's see who you really are," Braden muttered. He flipped the wallet open. The first thing he saw was a standard driver's license. Marcus Aurelius Thorne, 1402 Oak Creek Drive. The address matched the house. Braden felt a cold prickle of sweat on his neck. The man lived here. He was legally at his own home. But Braden pushed that fear down. He flipped to the next flap of the wallet. It was a Department of Defense identification card. Blue. Valid. Rank Command Sergeant Major retired. Next to it was a folded laminated card, a high-level access pass for the nearby military base, the kind reserved for senior personnel and contractors with high clearance. Braden stared at the ID Command Sergeant Major. That was E9, the highest enlisted rank in the Army. A man who managed battalions. A man who answered only to generals. Braden looked up at the back of Marcus's head. He looked at the gray hair cropped close in a military fade. He looked at the scars on Marcus's elbows. He should have stopped. Right there. He should have uncuffed him. He should have said, "Sergeant Major, I am so sorry. I messed up." But Braden's ego was in the driver's seat, and his ego was driving off a cliff. If he released him now, he admitted he was wrong. He admitted he had assaulted a retired veteran in front of witnesses. He needed the arrest to stick. He needed to find something, anything, to make Marcus the bad guy. "Military ID doesn't give you the right to ignore the law," Braden said, shoving the wallet into his own pocket. "You're still going downtown." "I didn't say it did," Marcus replied. "But that ID tells you that I know exactly what lawful orders are, and you haven't given one yet. Get in the car." Braden shoved Marcus toward the cruiser. Marcus didn't stumble. He walked with dignity, despite his hands being bound behind him. "Mrs." Gable was still shouting from her porch. "I have it all on video, Marcus. I'm calling your wife. I'm calling the news." "Call Sarah," Marcus said calmly over his shoulder. "Tell her not to worry. Tell her I'll be home for dinner. And tell her to call lawyer Weinstein." Braden slammed the door of the cruiser. He got into the front seat, sweating profusely. The air conditioning was blasting, but he felt hot. He looked in the rearview mirror. Marcus was sitting perfectly still, staring straight ahead. He wasn't banging his head against the glass. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't pleading. He was analyzing. "You comfortable back there?" Braden asked, trying to sound tough. Marcus didn't answer. He had initiated what he called command silence. In the military, sometimes the loudest thing you could do was say absolutely nothing. It forced the other person to fill the void. It forced them to think about their mistakes. Braden put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. As he drove out of the subdivision, he picked up his radio. "Dispatch 1 Adam 12, 1 under. Copy 1-Adam-12. What's the 10-19? Braden hesitated. He still didn't have a solid charge. "Disorderly conduct, non-compliance. Suspect was belligerent." "Copy." Belligerent. Marcus smiled internally. He hadn't raised his voice once. He hadn't cursed. He hadn't moved aggressively. The dash cam, which Braden couldn't turn off, would show the interior of the car. It would show Marcus sitting like a stone statue. The ride to the precinct took 20 minutes. Braden kept glancing in the rearview mirror, hoping Marcus would say something, anything that he could use. He wanted Marcus to threaten him. He wanted Marcus to say, "Do you know who I am?" But Marcus knew that the man who has to ask, "Do you know who I am?" has no power. The man who knows who he is doesn't need to ask. Marcus spent the drive mentally cataloging the lawsuit. Fourth Amendment violation, unlawful seizure. Fourth Amendment violation, excessive force. First Amendment violation, retaliation for speech. False arrest. Battery. He did the math. The city was going to pay for his grandkids' college tuition. They arrived at the precinct. Braden drove into the Sallyport, the heavy metal door clanging shut behind them. He pulled Marcus out of the car. "Let's go. Processing." They walked into the intake area. It was a busy Tuesday. Officers were typing reports. A few people were handcuffed to benches. The smell of floor wax and stale coffee hung in the air. At the booking desk sat Sergeant Miller. Miller was in his late 50s, a thick man with a mustache and tired eyes. He had been a cop for 30 years. He had seen it all. Miller looked up as Braden walked in, guiding Marcus by the arm. Miller's eyes swept over Marcus. He saw the posture. He saw the high and tight haircut. He saw the way Marcus scanned the room, assessing exits and threats even while in cuffs. "What do we have here, Braden?" Miller asked, his voice bored. "Disorderly. Failure to comply. Refused to ID during a suspicious person's stop," Braden said, placing Marcus's personal effects on the counter. The keys, the pocket knife, the wallet. Miller picked up the wallet. He opened it to inventory the contents. He saw the driver's license. Then he saw the blue card. Miller froze. He looked at the card. Command Sergeant Major Marcus Thorne. Miller looked up at Marcus. He looked at the cuffs. He looked back at Braden. "Braden," Miller said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Where did you arrest this man?" "At his residence, 1402 Oak Creek." "At his residence," Miller repeated. "You arrested a homeowner at his own residence for a suspicious person check." He was acting suspicious. He had a hammer. He wouldn't drop it. Miller closed his eyes for a second. He took a deep breath. Then he looked at Marcus. "Sergeant Major," Miller said, using the rank. "Are you injured?" "The cuffs are tight, Sergeant," Marcus said, "and my shoulder is a bit stiff from the rough handling, but I am medically stable." Miller didn't process the paperwork. He didn't start the fingerprinting machine. He walked out from behind the desk. "Uncuff him," Miller said to Braden. "What? No, Sarge, he's under arrest. I have to write the report." "I said uncuff him, Braden, right now, before the lieutenant comes out here and tears your head off." Braden blinked, confused. "Sarge, you can't just unarrest someone. He violated—" I am giving you a direct order, officer, Miller barked. The room went silent. Other officers stopped typing. Take those cuffs off. Braden, red-faced and sullen, pulled out his key. He unlocked the cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had dug in. He didn't complain. He just rotated his shoulders. Thank you, Sergeant, Marcus said to Miller. Don't thank me yet, Miller said grimly. He turned to a younger officer at a desk. Johnson, go get Lieutenant Reynolds. Tell him he needs to come to booking immediately. Tell him we have a code red situation involving a retired CSM. Johnson scrambled up and ran down the hallway. Braden was fuming. This is special treatment. Just because he was in the Army doesn't mean he gets to ignore police orders. Shut up, Braden, Miller said. Just stand there and shut up. 2 minutes later, the double doors at the end of the hall burst open. Lieutenant Frank Reynolds stormed in. Reynolds was a tall, wiry man with a crew cut and a face that looked like it was carved out of granite. He was a former Marine Corps captain. He ran his watch with iron discipline. What is going on? Reynolds demanded. Miller, why are we stopping intake? Lieutenant, Miller said, gesturing to Marcus. Officer Braden brought in this gentleman, arrested him in his own driveway for fixing a fence, charged him with disorderly because he wouldn't show ID fast enough. Reynolds turned his gaze to Marcus. He paused. He squinted. Marcus? Reynolds asked. Marcus nodded slowly. Hello, Frank. It's been a while, since the VFW barbecue last July. Reynolds' face went pale, then bright red. He looked at Marcus's wrists, seeing the red marks. He looked at the wallet on the counter. Then he slowly turned his head toward Officer Braden. Braden shrank back. He had never seen the lieutenant look like this. It wasn't anger. It was disgust. Officer Braden, Reynolds said, his voice deceptively quiet. Please explain to me why you have handcuffed and arrested a decorated war hero, a man who sits on the board of the local Veterans Association, and a personal friend of the mayor for standing in his own driveway. Sir, I didn't know who he was, Braden stammered. He was acting suspicious. He had a hammer. I told him to drop it and he gave me attitude. He was resisting. Did he attack you? Reynolds asked. No, but... Did he run? No, but... Did he threaten you? He was being verbally belligerent. He was challenging my authority. Reynolds stepped into Braden's personal space. Your authority. You don't have authority, Braden. You have a responsibility, and you just violated it. You arrested a man for contempt of cop. You manufactured a crime because your feelings got hurt. Reynolds turned back to Marcus. Sergeant Major, please come with me to my office. Miller, bring his effects. Braden, give me your badge and your gun. The room gasped. Sir, Braden squeaked. You are relieved of duty pending an internal investigation. Badge and gun. On the counter. Now. Braden's hands shook as he unclipped his holster. He placed his Glock 19 on the counter. He unpinned his shield. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing candy. Go sit in the break room, Reynolds ordered. Don't speak to anyone. Don't touch your phone. Just sit there and pray that the sergeant major is a forgiving man. Reynolds gestured toward the hallway. Marcus, please. Marcus walked into the lieutenant's office and stood by the chair. He didn't sit. Please have a seat, Marcus. Can I get you water, coffee? Reynolds asked, closing the door. I will stand, thank you, Marcus said. And I don't want coffee, Frank. I want accountability. Reynolds sighed and sat behind his desk, rubbing his temples. I know. I saw the booking sheet. It's a mess. He's a rookie, Marcus. A hothead. We've been trying to coach him, but... He's not a hothead, Frank. He's a liability, Marcus interrupted. He pulled a weapon on me, a lethal weapon, in a residential neighborhood, because I asked him to articulate a crime. If I had flinched, if I had reached for my phone, he would have shot me, in front of Mrs. Gable. Reynolds nodded. You're right. I'm not defending him. I'm telling you he's done. I'm pulling his certification. He won't work here again. That's a start, Marcus said. But it's not enough. You and I both know how this works. He'll resign, he'll move 2 counties over, and he'll be a cop there. And next time it won't be an old sergeant major he stops. It'll be a 19-year-old kid who gets scared and runs. And that kid will end up dead. Marcus leaned forward, placing his hands on the lieutenant's desk. I want the body camera footage preserved. I want the dash cam preserved. I want the dispatch logs. I am filing a formal complaint, and my lawyer is filing a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city and Braden personally. I'm not doing this for the money, Frank. I'm doing it because that boy needs to never hold a badge again. Anywhere. Reynolds looked up at Marcus. He knew Marcus was right. He knew the department had a problem, and Braden was the symptom. I will personally ensure the evidence is locked down, Reynolds said. You have my word as an officer. Good, Marcus said. Now am I free to go, or do I need to post bail for gardening while black? Reynolds winced. You're free to go, Marcus. I'll have Miller drive you home. We can keep the arrest record out of the system. Treat it as a detention only. No, Marcus said firmly. Process the arrest. I want the record. I want the paper trail. Because when we go to court, I want the judge to see exactly what your officer wrote down. I want the world to see that he charged me with failure to obey because I wouldn't bow down to him. Marcus turned and walked to the door. He stopped and looked back. You run a tight ship, Frank, usually, but you let a wolf in the sheepdog pen, and he tried to bite the wrong sheep. Marcus was right about the video. Mrs. Gable had uploaded her cell phone footage to social media before Marcus had even left the police station. By the time Sergeant Miller dropped Marcus off at his house, apologizing profusely the entire way, the video had 50,000 views. By the next morning, it had 2 million. The title was simple, Officer Pulls Gun on Veteran for Fixing Fence. The visual of a young frantic officer pointing a taser at a calm older black man standing in a manicured lawn was undeniable. The contrast in their demeanors was striking. The comments section was a firestorm of outrage from all sides, liberals, conservatives, veterans, civilians. Everyone agreed on one thing: Officer Braden was out of line. The lawsuit was filed 3 days later. It was a masterpiece of legal writing detailing every violation of the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and state battery laws. The city attorney took one look at the body cam footage, which showed Braden escalating immediately without cause, and told the mayor to settle. We cannot put this in front of a jury, the attorney said. A jury will hate him. Marcus Thorne is a war hero. Braden looks like a nervous bully. If this goes to trial, they will give Thorne the keys to the city. The settlement negotiations were short. The city agreed to pay Marcus $750,000. But Marcus had conditions. First, Braden had to be fired, not allowed to resign. This meant the termination would be on his permanent record, flagging him for any future police job. Second, the department had to institute mandatory de-escalation training for all officers, specifically led by veteran community leaders. Third, a public apology. The city agreed to everything. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Marcus was back in his driveway. The fence was fully repaired, painted a brilliant white. The leaves were turning orange and gold. A black sedan pulled up. A young man in a suit got out. It was a representative from the Veterans Legal Defense Fund, a charity that provided legal counsel to veterans who were wrongly accused of crimes. Mr. Thorne, the man asked. Sergeant Major, Marcus corrected gently, shaking the man's hand. Sergeant Major, we received the wire transfer today. I had to come personally. Sir, $750,000. That's the entire settlement. Marcus nodded. He looked at his house. He looked at his truck. I have my pension. I have my home. I don't need the city's money, but there are young men and women coming home from service who don't have my rank or my patience. They get stopped, they get scared, and they get railroaded. That money is for them. The young man was stunned. You're changing a lot of lives with this, sir. I'm just holding the line, son, Marcus said. Just holding the line. As the young man drove away, Marcus picked up his hammer. He wasn't fixing the fence this time. He was building a small flower box for Mrs. Gable as a thank you for her quick camera work. He worked in rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. The neighborhood was quiet. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. It was the same lawn where he had been handcuffed. The same lawn where he had been humiliated. But as he stood there now, breathing the cool air, he didn't feel anger. He felt a deep, resonant sadness. He thought about Braden. The young man had lost his career because he couldn't master his own fear and bias. He thought about how close he had come to being a hashtag, a memorial t-shirt, a name chanted at a protest. If he had been a little less disciplined, if he had flinched, if he had reached for his ID too fast, it was a heavy burden to carry, knowing that your survival depended not on your innocence, but on your ability to remain calm while a gun was pointed at your face. Marcus looked at the American flag on his porch. It was fluttering in the wind. He had fought for that flag. He had bled for it. And he would continue to fight for what it was supposed to represent: liberty and justice for all, not just for the people who looked like the majority, not just for the wealthy, but for everyone. Even a man fixing his fence on a Tuesday. He put the hammer down. He wiped his hands on a rag. He looked directly into the lens of the story right at you. Justice isn't given. It's demanded. It's fought for. Marcus Thorne won his battle, but the war for accountability goes on. The end. Have you ever been in a situation where authority was used against you unfairly? How did you handle it? Did you remain calm like Marcus, or did you panic? This story had a happy ending, but we know too many that don't. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the men and women who serve our country only to come home to suspicion and bias, please leave a like and share this video. It helps us tell more stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe. We have more stories coming that expose the truth and demand justice. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there.
Investigation officially closed. For additional unedited footage, remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for trusting Bodycam Incident Reports.